Hey guys, happy new year. You know what? Today I was sitting on the couch and I got a message from a buddy showing me the photograph of the Alaskan Airlines that lost part of its um, fuselage. And, just an amazing thing to see. And I'm so happy that everybody got out of this with no issues, landed the aircraft, um, was able to make it home. It's one of those things that it's a very rare event. I'm not actually going to sit here and talk about what caused that, but what it made me think about was basically an experience I had. And so I felt like I wanted to give it to you so that you know what is going on, how we train for this stuff, and the fact that if you happen to have something like this happen, it would be such a rare event. You might as well go win the lotto ticket. I mean, buy a lotto ticket because you're probably going to win. In 30 years of flying, I've only had one depressurization event, knock on wood. I've had one engine. Well, in the Marines, we used to lose an engine on the C-130 all the time because they were 1962. They were pretty dang old. Um, on the commercial side, the maintenance is very good. Uh, I want to throw out as well. I think personally, I've flown the Boeing Max quite a bit. I think the Max is one of the finest airplanes. I'm not going to go into why it had its failure until the report comes out. So when the report does come out, then we'll have a better understanding. Until then, I don't even speculate. It's like I tell my dad, Dad, that's UFOs caused that crash. He's like, "What are you talking about? UFOs? That's stupid." I'm like, "Yeah. Well, anything I would say about that incident is stupid until the report comes out, and then the experts, who that's their field and their specialty, can go in there and pick apart what happened." What I'm going to relate to you, I gave to Susan Keating over at Soldier of Fortune. I had posted something on Facebook, and she's one of my good friends. She also texts me out quite a bit because she flies often. And if she has a question, she'll text me and she'll say, "Hey, Taco, is this look right?" And she'll take a picture of the wing or something on the missing I don't know, speed tape or whatever, and I'll give her an answer and I'll let her know what's going on. And I never mind getting that stuff from folks because this is my expertise. This is what I do for a living: is fly commercial airplanes. Currently on the 737. But back when I was on the Super 80 in the mid 2000s, so it was about 2004. I remember they still had the new TSA. I mean, those guys were, let's just face it, they were not pleasant to deal with. So my captain, we had what we call a 3-hour productivity break at DFW. He says, "Hey, I got my car parked out here. Let's go get a Subway. You want to go?" And I go, "Not really, but I'll give you some money and you can buy me one." And he says, "No, no, no. If you want a sub, I'm buying, but you got to go with me and suffer the ass pain of TSA." And I just was like, "No, I'm not going to do it." So he comes back. I meet him at the gate and we push off, and everything's normal in the jet. Super 80 is a twin engine aircraft that the engines are in the tail. So when we rotate, take off, climb up, we get up to 35,000 feet. The cockpit is it's very quiet. I mean, it's a quiet airplane except for the trim, constantly going, "Eh." But, after about the third flight, you never hear that trim wheel alarm going off. So we're sitting there and we had these little boom mics, little pencil boom mics that it's a molded earpiece that they would do for you at the academy, and it has a boom mic on it. And that's it. I mean, you would listen with that. We didn't have full size headsets because it's a pretty quiet aircraft. So our headsets are hanging up on the railing where we put the sunscreen and stuff, the screen, and the mask, oxygen mask, are hanging up right behind us. On the 737, they're actually down in a container by my right knee and left knee on the captain's side, right side FO right by their knee, and in the back on the observation jump seat right there as well. And that mask is different because when you pull the 737 mask out, it has a little clip on it. When you push it, inflates and it's like an octopus, and it goes over your head, and when you release it, it sucks firmly to your head, so you have a really good seal. That's why normally we're not allowed to have beards or any facial hair, so you get a very good seal on the auction. Now, mind you, you only have seconds, depending on your weight. I mean, there are charts out there you guys can Google based off your weight, your health, exercise, the whole 9 yards. It'll tell you how long you have of useful consciousness before you pass out. Like Payne Stewart and those guys, when they took off and they flew up in their Learjet, they had undone a circuit breaker warning or something that they didn't realize it had a slow pressurization leak, and somebody didn't catch it, and they just went to sleep and never woke up and died. In this case, when we were up at 35,000, when you're in cruise, it's very boring. You know, you're just looking out and, you're talking about family, talking about your projects, whatever you're doing, but you just spend a lot of time looking out the window. It's like my fifth grade teacher said, pay attention. Nobody will ever pay you to stare out of the window. Well, man, how wrong that teacher was. But as we were sitting there, the 80 had a little gas vent right about eyebrow level, right here. And I used to have it on all the time, have the air blowing on me. And as we were sitting there, he makes a big production of pulling his big foot-long sub out. And he's got this spicy Italian sub, and he's smiling at me and takes a big bite, and he's chewing it, and he's looking over at me, and he's like, "I bet you wish you had one of these." And I'm like thinking, maybe I should have suffered the wrath of TSA and gone with him because I was getting kind of hungry at that point. And right about then, he's sitting there chewing. The air stops. I'm like, huh, that's weird. And I put my hand up and felt, and the air stopped. And I looked over at our cabin gauge, and it shows the differential pressure and the cabin pressure. And now, normally, when you're flying around on any commercial airliner, you're flying around at about, I'd say about almost 8,000 feet cabin altitude, except for the 787. The 787 has electric packs, and the cabin altitude's really low, around 4,000 feet. It's really nice. But almost any jet is about 8,000 feet. Now, when you think about it, 5,280 feet in a mile, if you're in Denver, say 6,000 feet, you're on a mountain 2,000 feet above Denver. So the air is very thin. That's another reason why we never let drunk people knowingly be inebriated on the aircraft, because they're going to be one of two things. They're going to be a mean drunk, or they're going to go to sleep, because the air is so thin in the cabin that accentuates the alcohol in your system. So anyway, you're flying around up there, and you don't have much of a margin between losing pressurization, going through 10,000 feet, and then going through, I'm trying to remember, maybe it was 12,000 feet when the mast dropped, or 13,000 feet, 12,500. I can't remember. That was so long ago. But at a certain point, the mask in the back will automatically drop out of their containers. Now, when you reach up there, we call that the rubber jungle. You have to pull on the cord to actuate the cylinder, and the cylinder on the 7.3 has about 12 minutes of oxygen that it produces. And you put the mask on, and that'll give you enough O2 to keep you conscious. At the same time, the pilots up front, they're putting their mask on, and the checklist, which is a memory item, you go through basically, they call it recall now, but you go through mask on 100%, crew communications established. Well, that was the hard part and the tricky part that nobody really talks about. So as this happens, and I'm watching the cabin go right through 10,000 feet, we get this alarm. And the noise, I mean, the horn's just obnoxious and it's loud. And so I'm look over, and I looked at him, and he's just eating another bite, and he's kind of looking at me like, what the hell's going on? And I look at him, I go, crap, mask, mask, mask. And he's holding the sub, and he looks, shit. He throws it in his kit bag. And I mean, lettuce, and um, uh, he had peppers, and I mean, everything was lettuce to onions. Everything was all over inside of his kit bag. He picked out for days after that. But he grabs his mask, he throws it on. Now we have to communicate. Well, our overhead speaker was on. But what nobody ever tells you in this event is that, like the window seals shrink. So, if you have no packs to produce the pressurization, the seals on the windows and the doors in the back, the galley doors and the emergency exits over the wings, all those seals shrink because when you go to add power, they fill up and makes it tight and makes a good seal. Well, they shrink, and so you have all of this horrendous wind noise coming into the flight deck through both windows. I mean, it is a loud, screeching, loud noise, and the wind was also the air coming in was minus 40 degrees Celsius. It was pretty damn cold. And he had just come off being an FO on the 767, and I hadn't experienced international with the airline jet, but knowing what I know now, he just rolled right into what they practice all the time, and that was hitting select roll 30 degrees, 10,000 feet, and then he hit IAS, which is our equivalent to level change. It's uh, not indicated airspeed, as she wrote. I need to correct Susan on that. It's a form of bringing the throttles back and allowing the airplane to start its descent. And they pulled the boards out and the throttles back to idle. The autopilot and auto throttles are on. That is so that if you do pass out, the airplane's going to go down and it's going to keep going down, and eventually it'll hit 10,000 feet and the airplane will level off, and the rattling of the boards shaking the airplane, and the oxygen down there, hopefully it'll wake you up and you'll be able to do it if you weren't able to get your mask on or you passed out at the time. So we had the mask on. We are unable to communicate because it literally is so loud. It sounded like Charlie Brown's teacher. Wah 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 wah. And I just in the blind, I've got the mask on. I'm just like, Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. 1492, clear the airspace out below us. We're coming down 10,000 feet, rapid depressurization. And then that was it. I was done with that guy. I was pulling the checklist out. Checklist is, I remember closing the outflow valve. You had to push this handle down and then run the outflow valve closed. Um, and then you had to notify the PA, the folks, sit down, seatbelts, make sure the mask have dropped and the lights on. There were a lot of things to it, but the adrenaline dump, the initial adrenaline dump, your fine motor skills kind of go out the window. Your gross motor skills still work pretty good. And so 30 degrees off, as I said, he's doing this dive like this so that we don't go beak to beak with another jet on an airway, because we're on an airway flying down to Monterrey, Mexico. And so he veers off to the right. The airplane's going down at a pretty good clip. We're actually leaning over the throttle quadrant, pulling our mask away from our mouth and yelling across from each other, just so that we could hear. And that was very, very tough. So you got the excitement, your heart's pounding a million miles an hour, you got this forced oxygen going on, you're reading the checklist, and you're following your training. And we always say, train like you fight, fight like you train. And that was basically what we did as we did this big dive. Going down with the noise and everything else, it wasn't until 10,000 feet we took the mask off. The forward rush of the plane as we're going through the air, it's louder over the windscreen stuff. Then we're able to kind of talk and it slow up the aircraft, which allowed us to hear the radio better, and put the earpiece back in my ear and cranked it so I was able to hear ATC. And we essentially got vectors straight into, I think it was 1-3 at San Antonio, and we came in right and landed. I mean, from altitude 35,000 feet to landing was somewhere between 8 and 9 minutes, I want to say. Amazing job. And so once we got down, one of the things I always remember, and people ask me what caused the packs to quit. Well, maintenance brought out a logbook, or not a logbook, but a computer printout, and it showed that every other day one of the packs, either left or the right pack, would fail. And so with the pack failing, eventually both of them gave out. They would, and I think you could be dispatched with one pack in op to 25,000 feet or something like that back then. and you could maintain pressurization. You just couldn't be dispatched with one packet on. So this had been written up, and it's one of those gripes that you read it and you go, well, there's a gremlin in there somewhere, but it's one every couple days. So it's one, then the other, but you might see one unless you go way back through the logbook. And he showed us this and he said, so after 30 days of left or right, pack quitting, both of them quit. And the airplane's so old, they just leaked like a sieve. And if you're not putting pressurization into the airplane, then the cabin altitude goes away pretty quick. I will say it's kind of funny, when the flight attendants tell you put your mask on, and also if you have a small child or somebody disabled needs help, put the mask on yourself first thing, give them their mask and help them. Well, there was this woman back there, mid plane, who had this lap dog, and she had the whole row to herself. And this dog is just going nuts, and she's trying to put the mask over the dog's muzzle, over his ears, and trying to keep the mask on. Well, she doesn't have a mask on herself, so she's getting pretty loopy. The flight attendant's arguing with her to put the mask on. She's getting argumentative with the flight attendant. She had to take care of her dog. This was a show dog, and the whole 9 yards. That was kind of funny. So note to self, make sure you do that. And then for all of my friends that fly the 737, which is a very loud flight deck. I mean, it's just a super loud flight deck, unfortunately. It's the way that the wind comes up over the front design of the windscreen hasn't changed since the 7.2 days. So it's a very loud plane. I tell all my compadres, I go, when you do this, it says crew communications established. How do you do that? And the majority of them will tell me, probably 9 out of 10 crews will say, well, I put my mask on. Okay, check. That's good. And then I'll reach down, I'll turn the intercom switch on, or the speaker switch, and I'll talk on the intercom switch to my partner. I said, that's great, except for one thing that is not described in the manual, and that is the fact that the seals shrink and you have this issue. Now that could be different if you had a issue like that Southwest jet that had the uncontained engine explosion, and a piece of it went through the window, and unfortunately, Jennifer, I just remember her name being Jennifer. Jennifer, mother to wife, she passed away. She was essentially sucked out of the window at first, and in that case, though, the other engine still providing pressurization to the pack, so all the seals around the aircraft would still be good. So in my case, with nothing producing pressurization to keep the aircraft pressurized, when the cabin is the same as the equal to the outside, all the seals are shrunk. Then that's when all the noise and loud stuff gets into the aircraft. Also, it gets really cold. I just remember freezing on the dive down, because it's about minus 40 degrees Celsius. And in the back, the flight attendants told me that walking around, because of the oxygen generators, the heat that they produce initially, from about waist up, it was really, really hot. And then from waist down or chest down, really cold from the cold air coming in through the cabin doors and whatnot. In this case, you don't have the pressurization at all in that section. Thank God they were at like 16,000 feet when that section of the aircraft left, which, by the way, is not a normal deal. And I'm not even going to get into why I think it just happened. If you look at Aloha Airlines, was that 262? Those guys had the roof come off. They were convertible. Unfortunately, a flight attendant did pass away on that. So good advice is always make sure you have your seatbelt fastened while you remain seated at all times. And that's for your safety in case of an incident like this. And with that big hole in the aircraft at 16,000 feet, I'm sure they went through the whole procedure, because the cabin immediately went to 16, the mask drop, and they put their mask on. They started their procedures to get down. And it was then that they called back to find out, hey, what's going on back there? Do you guys see anything? And I'm sure that's when the flight attendants told them, hey, there's a big hole in the side of the airplane. where the door used to be or the window was. And thankfully, nobody was sitting next to it. Nobody was um, sucked out. The person there didn't have um, wasn't sitting there right next to the thing. The kid did, had his shirt sucked off, I guess. But other than that, everybody made it pretty well. What I'll tell you, as I told Susan today, is for the ladies out there, if you are wearing stockings, nylon stockings, I probably wouldn't wear those. And the reason being is if there's a flash fire at all, the initial flash of the fire will burn those stockings. Anything nylon, that'll all burn to your skin to a crisp. That would be horrible. The other thing is, don't take your shoes off for takeoff and landing. Don't If you're asleep and your shoes are off, make sure you wake up. Somebody wakes you up. Put your shoes back on, and that's because in the event of something happening, you've got to get out of the airplane. Well, if you're in socks, you get out on the wing, slip, you're right off the wing. Um, the airplane's off the runway. It's in gravel. You're trying to run through gravel, get away from burning airplane. That would not be good either. So I would recommend having your shoes on for takeoff and landing. And the other safety tidbit I would give you is leave everything behind. Let it burn. Let it go. It's more important to get out. More people die of smoke inhalation than they do from the initial crash or the mishap. It's the smoke inhalation that'll get you. The plastics that burn pretty quick. For the 7-3 guys, what I meant to tell you was take your headsets. I know I'm going back and forth. Take your headsets, throw them around your neck. Take your mask, throw it on. Put your noise canceling headset right back over top. Lift your boom mic up, and now you can use the yoke, the intercom switch on the yoke, to talk to your partner with noise canceling, and you can crank it so you're able to hear, because you will not be able to hear with all that wind coming in through the windows. So, note to self, just something to think about. Um, do me a favor, all my newbie aviators out there in the airline world, do yourself a favor and train like you fight, fight like you train. Sit up in the flight deck at cruise when you've got nothing to do, and the captain's sitting over there eating his Subway sub. Just run through all the procedures. What would you do? What would you do in this situation? If we had an engine fail right now, what am I going to do? I'm going to go heading select, you know, um, 30 degrees off heading, 24,240 knots. Going to go level change, auto throttles off. So run through all the stuff that you would do. Run through the stuff what you would do with a depressurization. Pull the mask out. See how fast it takes you to get your headset off, pull the mask out, and then be able to talk to your partner next to you. It's a lot more complicated than you think in terms of when the rush of the adrenaline hits and your heart's going a million miles an hour. There's a lot of little things to do. So make sure you practice that and check it out. Um, let's see what I got. I'll answer some questions here. No more. It's going good, man. So, Michael, no, I didn't move it to Saturday. I'm actually going to dinner with Scott Gibson, is a buddy of mine. He was in the Pacific. He's down here visiting a friend. We've got a World War II vet. We're going, Don Graves, and we have another World War II vet. It's his birthday, so we're going to go meet him. And I just want to give this thing out. Susan, yes. You know what? Big shout out. If you guys haven't seen Soldier of Fortune, an old magazine from the 70s, I'm probably 60s, but I know for the 70s, it's been around. Susan bought it. She's now the owner and editor, and she is awesome. We've been friends for years and years and years. Go check out her stuff. She has some great stories. And Jim is always good. Most important thing, always wear your seatbelt. Yeah, exactly. You don't know where you are until you're free falling outside if you survive the quick exit. And only if you are below 20,000 feet. Hypoxia will still kill you in seconds. You're absolutely correct. And then if you're overweight like me and maybe not in the greatest shape, like I used to be when I was 25 or 30, yeah, it'll be even faster. So definitely, um, wear your seatbelt. What do we got? Bonnie Haynes making me hungry. Best sandwich on earth. Yeah, spicy Italian with toasted on wheat is my favorite. And he wouldn't buy it for me. I remember going, "Come on, man, buy me a spicy Italian. Here's the money." And he on purpose bought a foot long spicy Italian. Reb had something similar in 727 passing Gunnison, diverted into Denver's. Ours was a bit humorous, actually. You know what, Reb? I'll send you a link to the show. If you want to get on, I will put you on here in a second. Just send me a text and let me know, and I'll send you a link to the show. Dave, 16,000 is scary. 35 sounds terrifying. That was a relatively, yes, it was. It was a new aircraft, right? It didn't have thousands of cycles and hours. But once again, David, I won't comment on what I think happened. And, honestly, as I would lie to you, uh, I say honestly, I love the Max, the 737 Max. It's like driving a Ferrari for 737, which if anybody's flown 737s, like driving a dump truck or something. But I enjoy that. Hey Dan, how are you doing? Good to see you. Yes, airframes will leak. You have leaks, especially when the seals shrink. You have leaks throughout the aircraft, and it goes pretty fast if you don't have any pressurization. As a matter of fact, I mean, on the Super 80, you had a round um, valve. You had this butterfly valve, and it would modulate according to the pressurization. So if it needed more pressure, it would close, and if it needed to let some pressure out, it would open a little bit and modulate. So if you have pressurization, both packs working, and a window blows out, and that hole's out there, the engine's autothrottles are going to probably kick in, go faster to produce more air because you get the engine bleed air for the packs. And so the demand goes up, the power probably goes up, and you would produce more pressurization for the loss going out the window. Anyway, I hope that helps. Probably not explaining it right, but I hope I am. Peter Gree just had it grilled ham and cheese on rye. Yes, brother. Tell you that is good stuff. Makes you want to fly with a parachute. No, I don't think you would survive. I don't think you'd be able to get the parachute on. Susan asked me about DB Cooper. And the deal with DB Cooper is that airplane had air stairs in the back. So when you landed somewhere back in the old days, you could deplane without having, a concourse and jet bridge move up to the front of the airplane, just deplane everybody off the back. When I flew the 7.2, the airplane, everybody would get off the front, and as they were leaving, the cleaners came up the stairs in the back, and they would start cleaning from the very back row all the way forward. So it made sense. In DB Cooper's case, he had the pilots fly the aircraft low, and he opened that up while they were flying at a certain airspeed and altitude, and he jumped out. Otherwise, if you try to jump out of an airplane at Mach 7, 8, I'm sure everything on your body, it would be ripped away. Just a fact. Yeah. Yeah, Marine Corps combat boots. I tell you what, it works good, man. Um, leave your laptop, you can always buy a new one. Exactly. Exactly. Unless you've got all of your important work stuff on there, I'd take it and start beating somebody over the head. I had a Marine buddy that was on a 727 that crashed up in Chicago. They inadvertently went off the runway during landing. This is back in 96 maybe. And he stood up. He was in uniform, in Marine uniform. He was in his Deltas. So he stood up and he started yelling at everyone because they're all getting up calmly, opening up the overhead bins, grabbing their stuff, and he's yelling at them like a Marine DI, "Get off the airplane, get off the airplane," which they did. Have you ever had a situation like what happened to Alaska or Aloha? No. No, I haven't. all I've had was the packs depressurized. So that was a interesting deal. Just the packs. Kevin Kim, oh my God, I can't believe you're on here. Aviate, navigate, communicate. This is one of the best pilots I've ever flown with. Kevin's Naval Academy grad, P3 pilot in Navy, and probably one of the best guys I've ever flown with. Dave Lasher, given your experience, how prepared are you when an issue arises? While surprising, how calm and ready are you to respond to it? Is it momentarily terrifying? Yes, yes, and yes. So we train like we fight like we train. And Kevin can attest to this because he's one of my fellow instructors. Um, we right now have a scenario that what we do is we're at 36,000 feet and we have a depressurization, and we let the guys real time go from altitude down to 10,000 feet. And they have to run through the checklist. They have to do all the procedures and uh, drop the oxygen mask down. They have to, do the quick QRC card. They have to do their QRH. They do all the procedures as they would in the aircraft. So we train for this. Every pilot at my airline, and I guarantee you, every pilot at United, Delta, American, Southwest, everybody trains for this because it's really the one emergency that happens that you're able, if you can get your oxygen mask on, everything's good. Everybody else, um, the mask will drop. They've got about 12 minutes. Where it comes into play, what we do is we make it really hard for the students is you might have terrain, like you're flying down to Mexico and you have mountainous terrain, and we have certain escape points on a diversion chart. And so as we are constantly updating these points, if we have an issue, what we'll do is we'll drive to that one initial point as we're going down and say we call it the blue circle, and you've got red and you've got blue. Anywhere in the blue circle, you're good down to 17,000 feet. Once you hit the initial point and then you get on to this designated airway to get out, you can go down to 10,000 feet. And so we practice that all the time. So you kind of make it hard for them a little bit, and you do different things. How surprising calm are you? Well, I don't think my voice went up a couple octaves on that one. It's really disoriented to have the mask and the forced oxygen going, which can be a pain. Um, I would say, losing an engine and knowing that you're about to crash was about the scariest thing that I ever had. And that was back flying a Navajo chieftain with my boss, Pat Ridman. He's an artillery guy. I mean, this dude's like 150 pounds soaking wet, but fastest runner I've ever had. I mean, we do LSD, long slow distance trips, runs on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and that guy would outrun me every day, twice on Sunday. But we're sitting there flying along, and right as we had gotten up to cruise in Iowa, we had taken off out of Des Moines. We climbed up. We got to about 1,500 feet, and I pulled the power back and then the props, and I had runaway props, because what happened was the left engine ran away and the right engine needle went and followed it and showed 3,500 RPMs on both engines. So it was telling me that we had a runaway on both engines anyway. Declared emergency, and I had full power on one engine, on the right engine, and the other one back, and we're sinking at like 300 feet a minute. And that's when I realized, it's a weird feeling when you're telling departure, hey, Marine 09, we're going down. Once I land in the field somewhere, I'll give you a call and try to vector in, um, paramedics and fire truck. And, I'll try to call. Yeah, try to call, positive thoughts, because you're up there in Des Moines and you're looking around, there's nothing but farmers fields. So it made it a lot easier. And what happened was I looked over at my boss and I said, hey, sir, right as we're about to hit, I'm going to say, door, door, door. And I need you to pop that door open for me on the right, because he's got this little escape door, not escape door, but a small door that opens up on the right side. And I said, just pop that for me. I didn't tell him why, I just pop it. And the reason being is as you're coming right as you're about to land, you pop that door so in case when you crash, the airframe gets twisted, you might not be able to get that door open otherwise. And so in that case, he could open the door and hold it while we landed, and then it would be ajar. We'd be able to E&E out of there. Um, at the last minute, the guy goes, "Hey, you've got this little airport right off your left side, Ankeny Airport, if you can make it." And I looked, and holy crap, little tiny runway. That's too small. He goes, "Well, there's a remote control airport about a mile southwest of the main airport." And I moved up and looked because your vision just kind of goes, And I'm like, "Holy crap, got it!" And I rolled into a left base, cut off some Cessna 172, landed, and then my boss looks at me and he goes, he hadn't said a word the whole time. And he goes, "You know what? That was a hell of a lot better landing than you had last night. And you had two engines last night." And I'm like, "Sir, nothing concentrates the mind more than a mild emergency in the airplane." So it was kind of funny. Yeah, to be a 25-year-old Marine again, 20 pounds lighter. I'm telling you, brother, I started working out with a Marine because I joined a gym. That just doesn't work. Now I'm doing my stuff with this guy, and he's really running me ragged. Bonnie Haynes, hello to Don Graves. I will tell him that. And Susan, I love you. You're awesome. Let's see what happens. My wife is HR manager of a very large Gulf Stream. Oh, well, maybe you ought to bring her over and you guys come up to DFW and visit. Freddie Joe makes me never want to fly again. No, you know what? My dad had an engine failure on a Super 80 years ago, and they did an emergency landing into West Virginia somewhere. But I told him go buy a lotto ticket because the chances of that happening to you twice are very nil, and the chance for that kind of stuff to happen on a day-to-day flight, minuscule. I mean, thousands. We're talking hundreds of thousands of flights a day and commercial airliners. You could probably Google and find how many have had complete depressurization events. It's very few, not a whole lot, right? Good pilots always in training. We always train for all the emergencies, engine out. Running the checklist is convoluted to say the least on some of them. So you have to be proficient with all the checklist. Yes, always. And how do you train for a piece of luggage falling off though? Oh, fuselage breaking off though. Um, we don't. And oh God, what is her name? She was the Southwest captain that Southwest flight had the engine explosion. Um, and so when the piece of shrapnel went in, hit the window, and that's what caused Jennifer to get sucked half in, half out. Um, you don't train for anything like that. You don't train for the dual engine failure like Sully did. Although I can tell you from experience in the simulator that if you turn 30 degrees off hitting, lose both engines, and happen to have the APU running, because that's the only way this scenario would actually work out is have the engine APU already up. You could do a turn back to the runway that you took off on and land no problem. Yeah, about 2,200 feet, maybe 25 max. But yeah, sometimes you can get away with that kind of stuff and have fun. Um, show idea, all emergency landing sites for liberators returning. I don't know anything about that except for the B-24 that disappeared over the Libyan desert, and they thought that they were over the ocean at the time, and the guys bailed out. But that one was pretty interesting story. Lady Be Good, I think, was the B-24 ill luck that had that. 60 hours in sailplane. Who needs an engine? Yeah, you know what? You never seen a pilot sweat more when that big fan on the front stops. And we'll end with Dan. Aloha Flight asked her about her experience. She said she was scared to death. Yeah, I guarantee you'd be scared to death. Here's the other part: the adrenaline dump that nobody talks about. Um, when you have an emergency like that happen, the adrenaline dumps into your body so fast you're super hyped up. And as I said, the fine motor skills kind of deteriorate. Your gross motor skills still work fine. It's the downer, like after a firefight or something. If guys get into firefights over in the war, they would come back or a IED would go off or something would happen. And once they got back, then they got really tired. I'm sure Pretty Joe could expand on that. But in our case, they asked us, "Hey, do you want to go continue the flight?" And we are both like, "Yeah, yeah, man." And off we went. We grabbed another airplane. We flew down to Mexico. Every single person got back on the airplane. What really excited me about that, watching him deal with the passengers. He stood up right in front. He stood up in front of all the people, and he gave a explanation about what happened, and the chances of this ever happening again was very minuscule. And so, here's the deal. You guys, if you choose not to come with us, we understand completely. But I checked out the logbook. The airplane next door is great. We've got an awesome crew. We're going to get you back to your destination. We'll get you down to Monterey and you guys can go. There were a lot of businessmen because there were factories and stuff down there. Everybody, including the woman with the dog, got back onto the airplane and off they went with us down to Monterey. So I made it a note that anytime I have a situation, good, bad, or indifferent, I do all of my PA standing up in front of first class. I go back and talk to everybody in first class. And then if I have time, I'll walk to the back of the airplane, say hello to everybody. I have made little trading cards. I just got a new batch in. I've made little trading cards. These things I've had since 2016, and I hand out to people, little kids. So that's what makes, we don't fly boxes. Boxes don't complain. The people pay my salary, not the airline. Airline strokes the check, but if your butt's not in the seat, then you don't pay my salary. I don't get paid. So anyway, that's what I do. I really appreciated the way that he dealt with the folks. And I've noticed that when I go back there and I stand on the PA, if we have to take the airplane out of service, I tell them this, and I remember, it's you're my family, and my responsibility is the aircraft as the captain. And I tell folks, look, I want to put my family on this airplane. So if I'm not going to put my family on this airplane, why would we sit around and try to get this airplane fixed right now? Let them take it out of service. Give us a brand new one, new day. Let them go take this to the hangar and work on whatever the issue is. And when I relate it that way, I think people understand it a lot more. It's not about my inconvenience, it's about my safety. And I think that helps out people a lot. Um, Steve, Jerry Worst rule number one, fly the airplane as long as you're in the seat up front, keep it flying no matter what. Yep. Just like Kevin Kim said, aviate, navigate, communicate. We talk about that a lot. You have to fly the airplane. We get so excited about the gadgets that go on with things that'll happen. On an engine out SID, if there's an engine out SID, say you're in Reno, Nevada, when you um, when you have an engine failure and the flaps are still in takeoff position, not retracted, the SID, if it's in the box, will automatically populate. Well, guys get kind of excited and they'll get their finger down there and they'll start pushing buttons. And when they start pushing buttons, the other guy could be turning, maybe he's not has enough rudder in or whatever, he's drifting. So, we tell the other person, wait till 400 feet, unless the SID dictates, like taking off out of Washington Reagan to the north, you have to immediately turn to avoid the restricted areas over there in Washington, D.C. So aviate, navigate, and then communicate. Tell ATC what you want to do, declare an emergency. They work for you. You don't work for them. Had that situation once. Had to declare min fuel. The airplane was disabled on the runway going into Phoenix. That day they had given me min fuel because it was like, hey, Captain, it's VFR. You're going to take off out of Salt Lake, go up 39. You got a half load, come down, land, turn left, and you're there. And I said, yeah, give me an extra 1,000 pounds. I just don't like landing with 5,000 pounds of gas. And so They gave it to me, and we had the disabled aircraft on the runway. They told us to go to bruiser and hold for 45 minutes, I think, at 16,000 feet. And of course, you burn a lot more fuel lower. And I told the guy, stand by, we need to check something. So my FO pulled up hold, and we can hold for 1 minute. And then we started looking at our where we could bug out to, and it was Tucson, and um, I think we looked at Tucson and Vegas, but that was landing with minimum gas. We're talking with the lights on. So I wasn't a big fan of that because all I could see was you paint yourself into a corner pretty quickly. So I didn't want to be the guy that's on the human factors video in the fall. So I told the guy, well, at this time I'm declaring min fuel, and I want, because he was like kind of snotty. Well, state your intentions. What do you intend on? Where do you intend on going? I said, well, I'm declaring min fuel at this time. I want vectors to the south runway where Southwest lands. Fit me in. And I say, hey, buddy, I don't know what you want from me, but this is what's going to happen. My next call to you is Mayday. I'm not afraid to drop it. So give me vectors now. Oh, he was pissed. But we ended up getting vectors down by the time we came around. And of course, the runways now were turning around the airport to go land west at Phoenix. And by the time we were cutting across, our runway had opened up again, and we turned right in and landed. And we got to the gate, no problem. But wasn't about to let air traffic control kind of tell me what I needed to do. I was telling him what is going to happen. That's part of the stuff. Anyway, if I don't have any more questions, I'm going to wrap this up, you guys. It was great. I'm going to go meet those guys here at 5 p.m. Help set up for the birthday party. And until I see you all again, adios, hasta luego, auf Wiedersehen. Happy New Year. I said this in my post earlier. I really wish you guys nothing but excellent health, because you can make a ton of money, and if you don't have the health, you've got nothing. So I wish you and your family blessed health. For my friends like Heater, who are going through the cancer and they're dealing with their issues right now, I just pray to God that this year is good news and a lot better health. You guys have a good one. I will see you next time. I'm trying to have a podcast on Tuesday, but I think I have to fly unless I can get it taped before. If not, you guys have a good one. And Christopher Dixon, not going to miss you there. Sorry. You have a good one. And Bonnie, you have a good one as well. We will definitely talk to you soon. All right. Until next week. Adios, guys. See, what should I play as a going away here? I think I'm going to do this one. Bye, y'all.